The 96 Olympics, you correct me if I'm wrong, that's the same year that during the opening ceremonies, China comes in, you make a comment about human rights or lack of human rights. You draw this really strong rebuke from Beijing. Now fast forward to the year about to end where Daryl Morey from the Houston Rockets, he sends out a tweet that's supportive of the Hong Kong protesters, and all hell breaks loose again. Not that much has changed.
Yeah, I couldn't help but flash back to 96 because it's the same China playbook. They do not recognize the prerogatives of a free society where free speech is respected, and they expect that you will apologize. They threaten to take actions that will hurt you commercially, which is much more possible now because we're much more fully invested in that economy. What I said as the Chinese came in during the opening ceremony, and I want to emphasize, impressions to the contrary, I have never talked about issues like this unless they were pertinent to something that was happening in sports and during something like an opening ceremony.
Because you know people say, oh, stick to sports, Costas.
Yeah, well, when I'm doing play-by-play of a baseball game, it's the game.
Right.
I was always on pregame, halftime, or in interstitial portions when anchoring the Olympics or on the opening ceremony. It was never during an event or during a game, and it was only if it was pertinent. If this was Bulgaria, it doesn't have as much pertinence, but it was China. And what I said was, here is China, more than 1 billion people, an economy growing at some 10% a year. Every nation, including the United States, wants in on that market. But of course, there are overarching concerns about human rights and other issues. And then I also noted that they wanted to host an Olympics. They were in the mix for 2000, which went to Sydney, Australia. They had not yet been given or granted the 2008 Olympics in Beijing, and there'll be another one, a Winter Olympics, in 2022 in Beijing. And I noted that the IOC had some of the same concerns. And then I also said something to the effect, if there's any nation that has the means and the motivation to replicate the old Soviet Union Eastern Bloc sports machine, you're looking at that nation.
Was it extemporaneous, or had you mapped out what you intended to say when they came in?
I never scripted out, but you have, bullet points, things that you think you might want to mention. A lot of what you do during a play-by-play situation is spontaneous, but something like that, you have time to prepare. So I thought that I wanted to make those points, but I didn't have the exact words scripted. So now what happens, this is the early days of the internet, but the word gets out, and in Chinese language newspapers in the United States, I'm being harshly criticized, to put it mildly, and they're demanding an apology, and there were demonstrations outside 30 Rock. Now the Olympics are over, and it's mid-August, and I'm on vacation someplace, and I get a call, and they say they want you to apologize. They're demanding a sincere public apology in prime time. And I say, well, I'm not going to do that, and you can't quote me. Do whatever you want. And NBC put out some sort of one of those boilerplate statements. I don't think it was from the hierarchy of NBC. It was from someone at a lower level in the PR department, put out one of those, we're sorry if anyone was offended statements. And social
non-apology apology?
Yeah, social media wasn't then what it is now, and the thing died down. But it was exactly the same playbook from China.
End of year-ish final question. Who is more likely to be playing in the NFL next season as a quarterback, Tom Brady or Colin Kaepernick?
Tom Brady. It's possible that Tom Brady retires after the season. It's possible.
You told me once that you thought Kaepernick was being blackballed.
Yes.
It would seem like that was confirmed in the last couple of months.
When I was on your show in 2017, he had played the preceding season. And it was clear that he was good enough to start for some teams and certainly be a backup for many teams. So it was clear to me that he was being blackballed. But now more time has gone by. It's unclear how he measures up in the eyes of scouts. But it's also clear, even if you completely support his position, and I recognize his issue, and I recognize that his intentions are good with regard to that issue. I don't think he's a perfect messenger. We've talked about that before, but without getting into that, even if you're a 100% Kaepernick supporter, I think you can understand, based on what he said after the makeshift workout that he did several weeks ago, it's clear that he would intend to use this as an ongoing political platform.
Right.
And it's also clear that his value as a player is not worth it to NFL teams any longer, if it ever was, to put up with the, quote, distraction. We know that football people hate distractions, and in their eyes, he would be one.
Okay. Recording you as a Brady vote.
Yeah. Could Tom retire after this year? He could. But if I were to guess, I'd say he